So, a couple of weeks ago, MotoGP were at Silverstone for their British Grand Prix, and it's safe to say that it was an exciting race, even if the attendance figures weren't that great. The circuit won the rights to host the MotoGP British Grand Prix from 2010 after the complete show that happened with Formula 1's deal with Donington Park, which I covered in a video a few months ago. Since then, apart from 2020 due to the beer virus at the time, MotoGP has continued to race at Silverstone, even despite the low attendance records which I mentioned earlier. However, what if I told you that Silverstone was not meant to host MotoGP for that long, and that the British Grand Prix was meant to relocate to another track, and specifically to a track that isn't located in England? This is the story of the circuit that never was, known as the Circuit of Wales. Throughout the 2000s all the way up until the late 2010s, Wales's motorsport history was normally centred around one event, known as the Wales Rally GB. The event would normally stage the final round of the World Rally Championship and would produce some amazing moments, such as Petter Solberg winning the 2003 title after not leading the championship until the final round, Richard Burns winning the title after only achieving one win in 2001, and Colin McRae becoming the first British driver to win the World Rally title in 1995, with him doing some iconic donuts to celebrate. Since 2020, WRC has not returned to the UK, which is a real shame and is probably a topic I should cover at some point in the future. But apart from the Wales Rally GB event for WRC, Wales hasn't had anything racetrack related to get hyped about. In Wales, there are only two circuits, which are the Anglesey circuit, which often gets used for testing for some UK national championships and overlooks the Irish Sea, and then there's the Pembrey circuit, which up until 1993 used to host rounds of the British Touring Car Championship. Nowadays, it only gets used for Welsh national events, which is a shame, as if you look at any motorsport calendar, whether that's an international calendar or even a UK national calendar, Pembrey and even Anglesey are not present in any of them. However, a proposal for a new circuit in Wales looks set to change that and look to put Wales on the international motorsport map. The circuit would be known as Cilchford Cymru, which when translated into English would be known as the Circuit of Wales. The circuit itself would be located in the county of Blaenau Gwent, which I probably pronounced wrong, and I apologise to anyone from Wales for watching this, and would be on the outskirts of the town of Ebbw Valley, close to the A465 trunk road. The layout of the circuit would be anti-clockwise, featuring 22 corners, the most of any British circuit, and would consist of 3 layouts. A Grand Prix layout, which would be 3.5 miles long, a short layout, which would turn left after the pit straight, and a club layout, which would skip the second half of the circuit. The track would be backed by the Welsh Government, with the aim of creating around 6,000 jobs in the area, and attracting several racing series, such as the British GT Championship, the British Touring Car Championship, which would have made it the first time since 1993 that the series would have visited Wales, the World Touring Car Championship, the FIM Motocross World Championship, and the big one of them all, which would be crucial for bringing tourists to the circuit, MotoGP. The circuit would be proposed towards the back end of 2011 and would receive approval from the Blaenau Gwent County Borough Council. Construction of the circuit was scheduled to get started in the summer of 2013. However, after it received approval, it would receive opposition from many environmental and wildlife groups, such as Gwent Wildlife Trust, Brecon Beacons National Park and National Resources Wales. Even AMRCO, the Association of Motor Racing Circuit Owners, were also against this proposal, with the chairman of the group and Motorsport Vision owner Jonathan Palmer believing that the huge amount of investment that was being put into the circuit would not produce a return for investors. This opposition would in turn put the July 2013 construction date on hold until a review of the planning application was conducted by the Welsh Government. Nevertheless, this didn't stop the circuit's chief executive, Michael Carrick, not to be confused with this Michael Carrick, to strike a deal with a massive motorsport series. And so, on the 13th of August 2014, it was confirmed that the Circuit of Wales would become the new home of the MotoGP British Grand Prix on a 5-year deal starting from 2015. This deal, however, would come at a compromise, as because construction of the circuit had not started yet and would take over a year to complete, it was agreed that another circuit would host the race in 2015 before the Circuit of Wales would make its debut the following year. 3 weeks after the deal was announced, it was announced after much speculation that Donington Park would host the MotoGP British Grand Prix in 2015 as a sort of one-off return for the series before heading off to Wales for 2016. However, this deal would end up falling through 5 months later, as due to the Circuit of Wales not being able to distribute necessary funding to Donington Park as a result of the circuit's construction still not getting underway, Donington had no choice but to pull out of the deal, putting the Grand Prix's future in doubt. Sounds similar to another deal Donington had to pull out of, even though the reasons for that were completely different. Thankfully, this doubt was evaporated very quickly, as Silverstone, the track that the Circuit of Wales took the contract away from in the first place, stepped in to host the Grand Prix. But what was interesting about the announcement Silverstone made was the fact that not only did they announce that they would be hosting the 2015 edition of the race, but they would also be hosting the 2016 edition as well, confirming that the Circuit of Wales' debut had been pushed back to 2017. Silverstone would host both the 2015 and 2016 editions of the race, with both having memorable moments, particularly 2016, as it was the first MotoGP event I ever attended. 2016 would be the last time Silverstone would host MotoGP, as Wales was set to host the race the following year. Or so we thought. In late 2015, after a lengthy wait, the circuit finally got approval to build the circuit, after the land where the track was set to be situated was deregistered by the Welsh government, with the condition that the circuit would find a way to reduce the peak congestion traffic on the A465. Construction as a result would be scheduled for early 2016. However, this would not materialise, as the project would once again take a big hit, as despite the government giving them the all clear to construct on the land, they couldn't guarantee 100% backing of the circuit, with even Aviva, the Irish insurance company who were willing to provide financial backing to the circuit, not being able to guarantee at least 20% of the financial package they were offering, which was, for anyone wondering, £357 million. As a result, Silverstone would end up hosting the 2017 edition of the Grand Prix, with an option of hosting the 2018 race, which it would end up doing, even if it did get cancelled in the end due to poor weather, after construction of the Circuit of Wales was rejected again by the Welsh government. Since then, plans for the circuit have been abandoned, and as a result, Wales's dream of having an international motorsport facility was sadly over. So the question that needs to be asked, was this whole project doomed from the start? Well, despite the huge ambition, yeah, it was. It was quite clear to me whilst doing my research on this topic that the people behind all of this didn't think this through. When proposals for the circuit were first approved back in 2011, it already faced stern opposition from environmental and wildlife groups, given they were planning to construct the circuit on an 850-acre field that used to be common land, and there were concerns that it would disrupt the wildlife that usually roams around that field. Eventually, they came to an agreement with these groups that they would create replacement land that would span 800 acres, but this really should have been put in place from the start. Had they worked with these groups from the beginning, they more than likely would have avoided the hurdles that they ended up coming across. But because they didn't, it meant that the project was pushed back, and the more that it was pushed back, it led to the investors getting impatient, which led to funding drying up. It didn't help either that the Welsh government decided not to give them 100% backing, instead deciding to use their resources on developing an automotive business park. That's also ran into difficulties. Oh, the irony. After the failure to bring MotoGP to Wales, Silverstone stepped in yet again, and MotoGP still races at Silverstone to this very day. However, personally speaking, I wish it didn't. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Silverstone as a circuit, and I don't think you will find many people that dislike the circuit. However, I've got to be honest here. The way Silverstone goes about hosting MotoGP is fucking dreadful. It's no secret that Silverstone struggles to sell tickets for the Grand Prix. You only need to look at the empty grandstands as proof. Now, you could make the argument that it's because there is no British rider in the Premier class, and the fact that the top British rider in MotoGP happens to be in Moto 2, which is the step below the Premier class, and is probably the reason why they put Moto 2 on last for this year's Grand Prix, in which Jake Dixon won. However, whilst that might be partially true, I don't think that's the main reason, as at every circuit, you usually get designated fan zones at the grandstands, such as the Ducati stand, a Marc Marquez stand, and when he was racing, a Valentino Rossi stand. The main reason why the circuit struggles to sell tickets is because of Dorna and Silverstone themselves. Dorna for the fact that they do a poor job in utilising their social media accounts to promote upcoming racers compared to F1 who do put in a lot of effort in promoting racers, which I really hope Liberty Media does change should their application to take over MotoGP and World Superbike pass through, even if I'm not the biggest fans of them, and Silverstone because they've shown over the last few years that they simply do not care in my opinion. When I went to Silverstone last year to watch the 2023 Formula 1 British Grand Prix, I can remember on the circuit's audio speakers that they were doing a promotion on what was happening next month at Silverstone. And this was in July, by the way, so the advert was in reference to what was coming up in August. Now, I knew for a fact that MotoGP was racing at Silverstone in August, specifically 4 weeks after Formula 1 raced there. However, despite this, not once on that audio advert did they mention that MotoGP was coming to town. The advert did mention that there was going to be 2 World action taking place in August, but it wasn't in relation to MotoGP. I believe from memory it was some kind of classic motorcycle gathering that they were referring to. But either way, that advert to me proves my point. If they aren't even willing to mention on the circuit's audio speakers that MotoGP is coming to town, let alone promote it on their social media pages, then how on earth are they expected to sell a lot of tickets? No wonder they close off certain grandstands when MotoGP arrives. To me, it shows that Silverstone doesn't care, and I feel that the only reason they host the Grand Prix is just to add another major motorsport event onto their portfolio. Now, I will be honest here. When I first heard that MotoGP was switching from Silverstone to Wales from 2015, I was initially against it, as to me it didn't make a lot of sense. However, as I sit here now in 2024, I sort of wish the Circuit of Wales was a thing. I feel that had they not ran into any obstacles and had actually been constructed and opened, I think they would have done a much better job in promoting the race than what Silverstone does, given that MotoGP was meant to be the main attraction for that circuit. Plus, and on the topic of the area that it was meant to situate in, it definitely would have put the town of Ebbw Vale back on the map, as ever since the decline of coal mining and steel businesses around the UK, the town has seen a high amount of unemployment, and given that the Circuit of Wales was meant to open up 6,000 new jobs, it definitely would have put the town back on its feet. Plus, it would have also have been a massive boost for Wales, as with the Wales Rally GB slowly falling off the calendar, having an international motorsport facility like the Circuit of Wales would have been the perfect thing to fall back on in order for the country to still have a motorsport buzz. But as we know, that sadly didn't happen, and we are left in this dire situation when it comes to attendance records. To me, the lack of care Silverstone has should be enough of an indicator for Dorna to evaluate their options and try and find a different venue for the British Grand Prix, but we just know that's not going to happen. Personally, if I was in charge of Dorna, I would bring the British Grand Prix back to Donington Park, as in my opinion, I believe it is a much better racetrack for motorcycle racing than what Silverstone produces, and you can guarantee that Donington would do a good job in promoting it. Now, don't get me wrong, I am fully aware that Donington would need some work to bring MotoGP back to the circuit, as ever since they lost the rights to host the British Grand Prix at the end of 2009, most of the grandstands that surround the circuit have since been demolished, and they would obviously need some new ones and also improve some of the runoff, such as at the exit of the Fogarty S's, in order to make the circuit a viable option for MotoGP again. But one can dream, I suppose. One thing's for sure though, had the Circuit of Wales been built, you can guarantee that none of these issues would be happening.